I made a huge mistake. Have you ever had that feeling where you sense everything's about to go south, but you ignore it, thinking you can handle whatever comes next? That's how it all kicked off for me. Out of nowhere, I got a call from my cousin Emma. We weren't exactly close growing up. Honestly, we barely got along most of the time. But hey, family's family, right? And when she called, sounding like she was at her breaking point, telling me she'd lost her job and had nowhere to stay, I couldn't just turn my back on her. So I did what any decent person would do. I offered her a place to crash. I figured it'd be temporary, just long enough for her to get back on her feet, and then she'd be gone. Jenna didn't see it that way. She blew up as soon as I mentioned it. "You think it's a good idea to bring her into our home?" she said, arms crossed, glaring at me like I'd just made the worst decision of my life. I understood where she was coming from, though. She'd never liked Emma. Thought she was a mess. Someone who'd take advantage of us as long as she could. "It's just for a little while," I told her, trying to calm her down. But calming Jenna down is like trying to wrestle a bear. She got louder. "She's going to ruin everything. You know how she is." But I stood firm. Family sticks together. I can't just leave her out on the street. After a lot of yelling and slamming doors, Jenna stormed off to the bedroom, leaving me feeling like maybe I'd messed up. A few days later, Emma showed up with a couple of suitcases and that tired look on her face. I won't lie, it felt good to help. She had no other options, and despite everything, she was family. The first few days were calm. Emma mostly kept to herself, helped around the house, and didn't cause any trouble. She even pitched in with the chores, cooking, cleaning, things I didn't expect. But soon, Jenna started acting off. At first, it was just small things. She'd come home from work, see me and Emma laughing in the kitchen, and get all passive-aggressive. "Must be nice to just hang out all day while the rest of us have to work," she'd mutter. At first, I brushed it off, thinking she just needed time to adjust, but the comments kept coming, and they got worse. It didn't help that Emma was making things easier at home. It was like she was trying to prove herself, make up for crashing on our couch, and that seemed to drive Jenna crazy. Every time I complimented Emma for cooking dinner or folding the laundry, Jenna would twist it. "Wow, looks like you've got a new housewife," she'd say, her voice dripping with sarcasm. And when I tried to defend Emma, it only made things worse. We started fighting more loud, ugly fights that would have our neighbors wondering what was going on. Jenna accusing me of all sorts of things, saying I was playing house with Emma, getting too close to her. And Emma? She'd sit in the other room, probably listening to it all, then act like nothing happened the next day. The tension was thick, like a fog that never lifted. I'd come home from work and feel it the second I walked through the door. Jenna would be sitting there, glaring at me, as if waiting for me to slip up. Emma, on the other hand, would be trying to be helpful, suggesting maybe she should leave. But I told her to stay. I just couldn't bring myself to kick her out. It didn't feel right. Soon, that jealousy turned into full-blown paranoia. Jenna couldn't handle anything. If I spent too much time with Emma, she'd lose it. One night after dinner, Jenna snapped. She threw her plate down, and the glass shattered. "I bet you wish she was your wife, don't you?" she screamed, then stormed out, leaving me standing there stunned. I glanced over at Emma, who just stared back, wide-eyed, silent. I didn't know what to say. I was torn between wanting to comfort Jenna and not wanting to drag Emma into this mess. And then there was this nagging feeling. Maybe Jenna was just overreacting, letting her jealousy get the best of her. That's when I started noticing other changes in Jenna's behavior. She was coming home later and later from work, claiming she had to stay late. But something didn't add up. Sometimes, she'd come home smelling like a perfume that wasn't hers. Other times, she'd walk in, see me sitting with Emma, and roll her eyes like she couldn't stand to look at me. "Jenna, we need to talk," I said one night, trying to get her to open up, to tell me what was really going on. But she just brushed me off. "I'm tired, Mike. Can we not do this right now?" And that was it. She shut me out, leaving me to wonder what happened to the woman I thought I knew. I started questioning everything. Was it a mistake to bring Emma in? Was I missing something obvious? I thought I was just doing the right thing, helping family. But now, everything seemed out of control. And Jenna, my wife, my partner, the person I trusted the most, was turning into someone I didn't recognize. Someone who seemed to resent me more every day. And that's how it all started, with an uneasy guest and the unraveling of everything I thought I knew about my marriage. It began with small changes, things that might have seemed insignificant at first. Jenna coming home later, always with some excuse about a big project or helping out her boss. I wanted to believe her. I really did, but when she walked through the door, her moods were all over the place. One night, she'd be tense, hardly saying a word. The next, she'd be overly cheerful, like she was trying too hard to pretend everything was fine. I'd sit at the kitchen table, staring at my cold dinner, wondering what the hell was going on. But every time I tried to talk to her about it, she'd shut me down. "I'm just tired, Mike," she'd say, brushing me off like it was nothing. And that would be the end of it. I'd go to bed with more unanswered questions, wondering why it felt like I was losing my wife to something, or someone I couldn't even see. Things really changed one night while I was driving home from work. I decided to take a different route, cutting through downtown to avoid the usual traffic. And that's when I saw them, Jenna and some guy, standing outside a fancy restaurant. I recognized him instantly. Ryan, the colleague she'd mentioned a few times. But they weren't just standing there. They were laughing, leaning into each other, like they shared some secret. I saw her touch his arm, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I pulled over a block away, trying to gather my thoughts. I couldn't move. I just sat there, staring at them through the rearview mirror, my stomach in knots. It wasn't obvious, no kisses or anything that would be seen as wrong by most people. But the way they were acting, the way she was touching him, it felt like something I shouldn't be seeing. I wanted to get out of the car and confront them, but I stayed frozen, second-guessing myself. My mind raced. Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe they were just colleagues, just having a laugh. But deep down, I knew better. When Jenna came home later that night, I asked her about it casually, trying to keep my tone light. "So, how's Ryan?" I said, testing the waters. She looked at me, that fake, innocent look she's perfected over the years. "What do you mean?" she said, voice flat and dismissive. "I saw you two together," I said, more forcefully than I meant to. And there it was, the act, the sudden defensiveness. "Oh, for God's sake, Mike," she said, her voice dripping with irritation. "We were just having a bite to eat after work. He's just a friend, okay? Don't make it into something it's not." But I knew Jenna too well. I knew when she was being honest and when she was lying through her teeth. And that night, she was definitely lying. Her eyes kept darting away from mine, refusing to hold my gaze. Her words stumbled, like she was scrambling for a story that would hold up. I could feel it. She was hiding something. My blood boiled at the thought of her treating me like I was blind to what was happening right in front of me. I didn't push her any further that night. Part of me didn't want to hear more lies. I just nodded and let it go. But that didn't make it go away. It ate at me, gnawing at me all through the night. I needed someone to talk to, so I turned to Emma. She was the only person who knew what was really going on inside that house. Later that evening, after Jenna had stormed off to bed, I grabbed Emma and pulled her aside. "Can I talk to you about something?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Emma gave me this knowing look, like she'd been waiting for me to open up. "What's going on?" she asked softly, concern in her eyes. I laid it all out for her. The late nights, the weird moods, the sight of Jenna with Ryan. Emma didn't interrupt. She listened closely, not judging, just taking it all in. When I was done, she shook her head, more angry than surprised. "Something's definitely off," she said, her voice sharp. "Who does that? Laughing with another guy like that when they're married?" Her disbelief was palpable. She leaned in closer, lowering her voice like we were sharing a secret. "Mike, you need to keep an eye on her. If she's hiding something, you deserve to know." Having Emma on my side felt like a weight had been lifted. At least someone validated what I had been feeling. I agreed with her. From that moment on, I was watching everything. Every time Jenna's phone buzzed, every time she left the room to take a call, my heart would skip a beat. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she was with him, wondering what parts of her life she was keeping from me. It was driving me mad. I started paying attention to every little detail. The time she left, when she came back. I made mental notes of everything she said, trying to connect the dots, waiting for some slip-up that would prove my suspicions. But soon, the paranoia got the best of me. One night, Jenna was supposed to be working late again. Emma was in the living room reading a book, but she noticed me pacing back and forth. "Why don't you just check her phone?" Emma suggested after a while. "If she's not hiding anything, there won't be anything to find." I didn't need much convincing. The phone was sitting there, innocently on the kitchen counter. I picked it up, hands shaking as I unlocked it. My heart pounded in my chest, my thoughts racing. It felt like I was crossing a line, like I was betraying her by even looking at it. But I had to know. I couldn't keep living like this, stuck in this limbo of doubt. I scrolled through the messages, keeping my cool, trying not to let my mind spiral. Most of the texts were nothing, just mundane conversations. But then I saw it. Ryan. His name stood out like a red flag, and my fingers froze as I opened the conversation. The most recent message was simple. "Let's meet up. Same place as last time." And that's when everything shifted. My world spun, my grip on the phone tightened, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. There it was. All my suspicions, all the feelings that had been building up, came crashing down in that one moment. I didn't want to believe it, but the proof was right there, staring me in the face. I put the phone down, my mind reeling. I looked at Emma, who had been watching me closely. "Well?" she asked, sitting up a little. I told her what I found, and she shook her head in disgust. "She's a piece of work, Mike," she said coldly. "You deserve so much better than this." And she was right. But now I was stuck. What the hell was I supposed to do? It felt like I was standing on the edge, looking down into a deep, dark hole, knowing that whatever decision I made next would change everything. After seeing that message on Jenna's phone, I didn't know what to do anymore. I turned to Emma. She was in the kitchen, casually making coffee, like the night had been just another night. But when I walked in, I must have looked like a ghost because she instantly set the mug down and rushed over to me. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice steady. But her eyes had that sharp intensity I'd gotten used to. I handed her the phone, pointing to Ryan's message. She read it, her lips tightening and her eyes narrowing as she processed what she was seeing. "You get it now?" I asked, my voice trembling, caught between disbelief and rage. "She's meeting him tonight." Emma looked up at me, and there was that fire in her gaze. "You know what you need to do," she said, her voice calm but firm. "You need to confront her. Don't keep waiting around for her to admit it. She won't. Trust me." I felt like I was in some bad TV drama, like it wasn't real life. But at that point, I was past caring about what seemed logical or sane. I was desperate. "What do we do?" I asked, a mix of dread and determination weighing me down. Emma didn't hesitate. "We go to the bar," she said. "We'll be there watching. She's expecting to meet him tonight, right? Well, we'll be right there." The idea of watching my wife with another man made my stomach twist. The thought of seeing her laugh with him, being so at ease with him, made my insides churn. But another part of me needed to see it, to get that undeniable proof that she was betraying me. I wanted the truth, no matter how much it destroyed me. When Jenna came home to get ready for her girls' night, I did my best to act like everything was normal. I sat on the couch, pretending to watch TV. She breezed in, overly cheerful, as if nothing had changed, and went straight to the bathroom to shower and change. I could hear the water running, each drop echoing in my mind like a countdown. When she finally emerged, looking all put together, tight dress, heels that seemed too high for someone who wasn't trying to impress, I felt a knot tighten in my chest. "Going somewhere special?" I asked, trying to keep the edge out of my voice, though I knew it wasn't working. She flashed that smile at me, the one that used to melt me. Now it just made me sick. "Just out with the girls," she said, grabbing her purse. "Don't wait up." As soon as the door closed behind her, I was on my feet. Emma and I got ready to move. We headed straight to the bar from Ryan's message, a trendy spot Jenna never visited with me. I couldn't help but wonder how many times she'd been there with him. We parked a block away, sitting in silence, hearts racing in sync. Emma leaned in and whispered, "Ready for this?" "No," I admitted, but at that point, I knew there was no turning back. We entered the bar, and it didn't take long to find them. There they were, sitting at a booth in the back so close I could hardly believe it. They were laughing, really laughing, like they had their own little world. Jenna's whole face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in months. And Ryan? He was leaning in, whispering something in her ear that made her giggle like it was the most natural thing in the world. I wanted to march over there, flip the table, and drag him outside by the collar. But Emma grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in. "Don't," she whispered. "Just watch." And so that's what we did. We found a spot at the bar, out of sight but close enough to see everything. The longer I watched, the more my heart broke. Jenna looked so carefree, so happy, like she didn't have a care in the world. Did she even think about me? Did she feel any guilt? Probably not. We watched them order drinks, cocktails she would never choose when we were together. They clinked glasses, toasting to something I couldn't hear. Then Jenna leaned in, smiling that smile that used to be mine. Ryan placed his hand on hers, his fingers tracing over her knuckles. She didn't pull away. It felt like a knife to the gut. Emma's grip on my arm tightened, and I could feel her anger radiating from her like a force field. "She doesn't deserve you, Mike," she hissed, her voice dripping with contempt. "Look at her. Look at how easily she lies to you." Part of me wanted to confront them right there, to make a scene, to call Jenna out in front of everyone. I wanted to scream at her, to ask how she could betray me like this. But another part of me, one that was still trying to hold on to some semblance of dignity, held me back. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me lose it. I didn't want her to think she'd won. So I just sat there, watching her flirt with another man, feeling my marriage slipping away, piece by piece. Time seemed to stretch on forever, but eventually, Ryan stood up and took Jenna's hand. They walked toward the door, and with every step, I felt like I was losing a piece of myself. "Come on," Emma said, pulling on her jacket. "Let's go before they see us." We left the bar, walking back to the car in silence. I felt like I was in a fog, numb, disconnected. "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Emma turned to me, her eyes cold and determined. "We make her pay," she said, her words sharp and final. And as crazy as it seemed, I believed her. I needed to believe her, because in that moment, revenge felt like the only thing that could stop me from falling apart completely. But as we drove home, the weight of what I had seen started to settle in. My wife, the woman I thought I knew, was out there with another man, laughing with him, touching him, making plans with him behind my back. It wasn't some impulsive fling. This was planned, calculated, and that hurt more than I could ever put into words. By the time we got back to the house, I felt like a hollow shell of who I used to be. I knew things were about to change, but I had no idea how or when. All I knew was that the woman who walked out of that door tonight wasn't my wife anymore. I couldn't get the image of Jenna and Ryan out of my head. There they were, laughing together, wrapped up in their own world while mine crumbled around me. It felt like I was trapped in a nightmare, one of those dreams where you scream, but no sound comes out. The thing was, I wasn't dreaming. This was real, and I was wide awake, facing the painful truth of my falling marriage. Emma was waiting for me in the living room. She'd gone straight to the liquor cabinet and was already pouring us both a glass of wine. "Here," she said, handing me a glass and clinking it against hers. "You look like you need this." She was right. I drained half the glass in one go, the burn of the alcohol coursing through me. It didn't numb the ache in my chest, but at least it gave me something to focus on, a distraction from the weight of everything crashing down. I sank onto the couch, staring blankly at the wall. The silence in the house pressed down on me, a suffocating weight I couldn't escape. Emma sat beside me, closer than usual. For a while, we didn't speak, just drank in silence. "Talk to me, Mike," she said after a while, her voice soft but firm. "You can't keep all this bottled up." I opened my mouth, and suddenly, the words came tumbling out. I told her everything. The way Jenna's smile looked different with Ryan, the way they touched each other, how she lit up around him in ways she never did with me anymore. Emma listened intently, nodding, cursing under her breath, her eyes hardening more with each word. "You don't deserve this," she said, her voice venomous. "She's making a fool out of you." The anger in her voice mirrored the fire in my chest. I slammed the rest of my wine down, feeling the tension building in my body. You give her everything, and she repays you like this, Emma continued, her voice trembling with fury. God, Mike, I just want her to pay for this. The words stung, but they also lit a fire I couldn't ignore. I looked down at my empty glass. Yeah, well, what am I supposed to do? I muttered. She's out there, living her secret life. And here I am, stuck, not even knowing who she is anymore. Emma refilled my glass, her gaze locked on me. She leaned in closer, her voice low and deliberate. You know, if Jenna's so worried about you being around me, maybe we should give her something real to worry about. I blinked, confusion flooding my mind. What do you mean? Emma flashed a sly smile, one I'd never seen before, and it felt like a challenge. Think about it, Mike. She's out there having her fun with Ryan. Maybe it's time she knows what it feels like. Give her a taste of her own medicine. She took a sip of her wine without breaking eye contact, and my skin prickled. I was stunned. The thought of doing something like that had never crossed my mind. I wasn't that kind of guy. Or at least I didn't think I was. I can't do that, Emma, I said, shaking my head. I'm not like her. Maybe you should be. Emma shot back, her voice fierce. What's stopping you? She doesn't respect you. She doesn't love you. She's out there living her double life, and you're here, being the good husband, suffering in silence. Screw that, Mike. You deserve to be happy, too. I didn't know what to say. On one hand, the idea of cheating felt like a line I couldn't cross. But then again, hadn't Jen already crossed it? Wasn't she out there right now, with Ryan, lying to me, betraying me with every word she spoke? I looked at Emma, and for the first time, I saw her in a different light. Not just as my cousin, but as someone who truly understood me. Someone who was willing to stand by my side, no matter what. The wine was starting to work its way through my system, clouding my judgment, making it harder to tell right from wrong. You really think it's a good idea? I asked, my voice quieter, uncertain. Emma leaned in closer, and I could smell the faint scent of her perfume mixed with the wine on her breath. I think it's the only way to take back some control, she whispered. She doesn't get to treat you like this and walk away scot-free. The air between us seemed to thicken with tension. The room felt like it was closing in, as if we were about to make a decision that would change everything. I wanted to say no. I wanted to be the better person. But as Emma's hand brushed against mine, as her fingers interlaced with mine, something inside me snapped. The anger, the betrayal, the need for revenge, it all exploded to the surface, drowning out every other thought. And before I knew it, I was kissing her. It started slow, hesitant, like we were both testing the waters. But once that line was crossed, there was no going back. It was messy, frantic, driven by a need to feel something, anything, other than the pain I'd been carrying for weeks. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt alive. I didn't think about Jenna or Ryan or the consequences. It was just me and Emma, two people trying to escape a world that had fallen apart. We walked to the bedroom, a sense of urgency in the air, both of us lost in the moment, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. I knew it was wrong, that it would change everything. But in that moment, I didn't care. I wanted to forget. I wanted to lose myself in someone who actually cared about me. Emma was right there, matching every move, whispering words of encouragement, telling me I deserved this, that I deserved to feel wanted. Afterward, we sat in silence, both of us processing what had just happened, the weight of the situation settling in. And for a brief moment, that silence felt more comforting than anything I had felt in weeks. But then reality came crashing back in, and I couldn't help but wonder what the hell we'd just done. The next morning was a blur. I woke up to the sound of the front door opening, and panic hit me like a freight train. Jenna was home. I bolted upright, and that's when I noticed Emma, still half asleep beside me. It was too late. The door swung open, and there she was, Jenna, standing in the doorway, eyes wide in disbelief, taking in the scene. What the hell? Jenna's voice sliced through the silence, and my stomach dropped. She stormed into the room, her face twisted with rage. Are you serious, Mike? In our bed? I didn't know what to say, didn't know how to defend myself. But then again, what was there to explain? She'd made her choices, and I'd made mine. Of course, Jenna wasn't about to see it that way. How could you do this to me? She screamed. her voice trembling with fury. "After everything I've done for you, after all these years, and this is how you repay me?" Emma, who had just gotten out of bed and wrapped the sheets around herself, tried to calm the situation. "Maybe you should think about your own choices before you start blaming others," she said, her voice firm but measured. But Jenna wasn't hearing any of it. "You're both disgusting," she spat, her tears streaming down her face. Not the tears of regret I had expected, but tears of pure indignation. She couldn't seem to fathom how anyone could betray her, the queen of hypocrisy. And for once, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel sorry for what had happened. Because as I stood there looking at the woman who had torn apart our marriage, who had made me question my own worth, I realized that this was it. There was no going back. Nothing would ever be the same, and maybe that was okay. Jenna's face turned a furious shade of red, her eyes wild as she screamed again. How could you? How could you do this to me, Mike? To us?" She stood there trembling, fists clenched so tight I thought she might hurt someone. Maybe me, maybe Emma, maybe herself. Her words came out like poison, bitter and full of rage. She launched into a tirade, ranting about betrayal, acting like the victim, as if she hadn't been sneaking around with Ryan for God knows how long. "Do you know what you've done?" she shouted, her voice cracking with emotion. "You've ruined everything. My life. Our marriage." She turned to Emma, her voice dripping with contempt. "You're a snake. Both of you. God, I can't believe this." I felt my anger surge, a hot wave of heat flooding my body. I couldn't take it anymore. I was done listening to her twisted version of events. Done pretending I was the one at fault. "You want to talk about betrayal, Jenna?" I said, my voice rising to match hers. "Don't you dare act like the victim. Don't forget that I know about Ryan." The room fell dead silent. Her mouth opened and closed, her eyes frantically darting around, searching for a way out. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, panic flashing across her face. "Cut the crap, Jenna," I shot back, stepping closer. "I saw the messages. I saw you two at the bar. You think I'm stupid? You think I don't know what's been going on behind my back?" She froze, her whole body tensing like she was bracing for impact. Then, true to form, she tried to manipulate the situation. She tried to twist the truth until it didn't look so ugly. "It wasn't what you think," she said, her voice suddenly softer, as if the change in tone could somehow change the facts. He's just a friend. I never meant for it to go this far, Mike. I was lonely. You were so wrapped up in your own world, and I needed someone to talk to. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything, she still found a way to make herself the victim, as if her choices were somehow my fault." I laughed, a bitter, ugly laugh. "You know what? I'm done," I said, my voice steady but final. "I can't do this anymore, Jenna. I won't. I'm filing for divorce. You and Ryan can have each other for all I care." Her face twisted with a mix of disbelief and fury. "You're throwing all this away because of one mistake," she screamed. "You're breaking up our marriage over one stupid thing?" "It wasn't a mistake, Jenna," I said, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders as I spoke. "It was a choice, and you made it over and over again." Jenna had no rebuttal. She just stood there, shaking with rage, her chest heaving as she glared at me, and then at Emma. Then, with one last furious glance, she stormed out of the room. For a long time, we just sat there in silence, the sound of doors slamming and things being thrown echoing through the house. Emma didn't say much after that. I think we both knew we'd crossed a line, one that could never be uncrossed, and that things between us would never be the same. A few days later, Emma packed up her things, telling me she found a place to stay. "I think it's for the best," she said, and I couldn't argue with that. There was too much history, too much damage. We tried to stay friendly after she left, but it was always awkward, like we were walking on eggshells, avoiding the inevitable. As for Jenna, she was gone a week later. She left a note saying she was staying with a friend until things blew over. But I knew the truth. She didn't want to face what she had done. The divorce was ugly, as they always are. She fought me on everything, the house, the money, the furniture. At one point, she even tried to guilt-trip me, telling me that we could still work things out, that I was being vindictive for wanting to end it. But I held my ground. It was over, and nothing she said would change that. When everything was final and the paperwork was signed, I stood in the middle of what used to be our home, feeling a strange mix of freedom and emptiness. Everything had changed. I had no idea what came next, but I knew one thing: I was going to rebuild, piece by piece. The weeks that followed were a blur. I started picking up old hobbies I had abandoned: fishing, hiking, even learning to cook a halfway decent meal for myself. It felt odd at first, trying to fill the empty spaces where Jenna had once been, but eventually it got easier. I started reconnecting with old friends, the ones who had faded into the background while my marriage was falling apart. Emma and I kept in touch, but there was no talk of rekindling what had happened between us. We both knew it was a mistake, a desperate act in the midst of chaos. While there was a part of me that still felt connected to her, we kept things strictly platonic. There were moments, though, late at night when I'd lie in bed, replaying everything, wondering if I'd made the right choices, wondering if maybe I'd lost more than I'd gained. But eventually, I realized that forgiveness wasn't about letting someone off the hook. It was about letting yourself move on. So, I forgave Jenna, as much as anyone could forgive someone who had shattered their heart. But more importantly, I forgave myself for the mistakes I made in my anger, for the things I'd done out of desperation. Life started making sense again in a new way. I found a new normal, new routines. Eventually, I started dating again. Nothing serious at first, just casual dinners, awkward coffee dates. But then one day, I met someone who didn't make me feel like I had to try so hard. Someone who saw me for who I really was and didn't expect me to be anything else. As we spent more time together, I realized that love isn't about finding someone who makes you whole. It's about finding someone who makes you better. Someone who pushes you to be honest and open. Someone who trusts you and who you can trust in return. It took losing Jenna to learn that lesson, but I came out of it stronger, wiser, and more grateful for the simple things like waking up next to someone who actually wants to be there. Looking back, I don't have any regrets. The pain, the betrayal, the anger, it all led me here. And maybe that's what life is all about: learning, letting go, and finding new ways to love and be loved, even after everything falls apart.